Did you know that there is a hidden kingdom underneath your feet? Yes. In a place deep underground, there is a kingdom occupied by the most enlightened beings, a place called Shambhala. However, this place is not widely known. For centuries past and more to come, this kingdom remains hidden from plain sight while waiting to come into the open. Where is Shambhala? What are they hiding? And more importantly, what happens when this hidden kingdom finally reveals itself? We'll find out together in this new episode of Secret Origins. Welcome. But before we answer these questions, where did the legend of Shambhala come from? It all started with the ancient texts of Hinduism. Long before Tibetan monks wrote about a hidden kingdom in their monasteries, Hindu scriptures were already documenting something extraordinary. And when the text, Vishnu Purana, came to light, the world was shaken. Right on chapter 24, book 4 of the Vishnu Purana, we see the first glimpse of the word Shambhala. But this wasn't just a passing mention. The Vishnu Purana went into detail, describing Shambhala as the birthplace of something apocalyptic. According to the ancient Hindu text, the world will descend into a terrifying dark age. At this time, evil consumes everything and righteousness fades to nothing. When this happens, a divine being will be born in Shambhala, and his name shall be Kalki, the 10th and final avatar of Lord Vishnu. This is how the text describes his arrival. The divine being, who is the beginning and the end, who comprehends all things, shall incarnate upon earth in dark times. He will be born in a family in Shambhala village as Kalki, a world teacher for all peoples of the world, without separation of race or religion. But here is the thing. Kalki is not just coming to teach. He's coming to wage war. The prophecy went further to state that Kalki will destroy all those whose minds are devoted to evil. He will re-establish righteousness upon earth. And after his victory, the minds of those who survive shall be as clear as crystal. These renewed minds will bring forth an era of purity, a new golden age called the Satya Yuga. Now here's what makes this chilling. Another ancient text called the Bhagavata Purana provides even more specific details. It states that Kalki will be born in the house of Vishnu Yasha, a respected Brahmin in Shambhala village. Born on the 21st fortnight of Krishna's birth, these aren't vague predictions. These are coordinates in time. Kalki was prophesied to brandish a blazing sword while riding a white horse. The texts say that this being is not coming as a peaceful teacher, but as a warrior king destined to cleanse the world. This Hindu origin story established something crucial. Shambhala wasn't just a place, it was the launching point for humanity's salvation or destruction. But if Shambhala's story began in Hindu texts, why is it mostly publicized as a Tibetan myth? This is why. In 1027 AD, Tibetan Buddhism transformed the Shambhala story into something far more detailed, and you must know, far more unsettling. And it all started when Tibetan scholars wrote the ancient manuscripts called the Kalachakra Tantra. This manuscript wasn't just spiritual philosophy. It was a complex system of teachings that explored time, the universe, and human consciousness at levels that seemed too advanced for today's research. No wonder the Kalachakra Tantra changed everything about how we understand Shambhala. Because unlike the Hindu texts that spoke of it as a village, the Tibetan texts described it as an entire kingdom, a civilization with specific geography, specific rulers, and specific prophecies. According to the Kalachakra, Shambhala exists on multiple levels. There's the outer meaning, which describes it as a real physical place. But here's the catch. The texts insist that only individuals with the proper karma can reach the physical place. That is, only those whose spiritual development has reached a certain level can even perceive that it exists. Then there's the inner meaning, which relates to your own body and mind. This inner meaning is said to only be revealed during deep meditative practice. How sacred! Yes, these practices were so sacred that they could only be passed orally from master to student. It might surprise you to know that the Tibetan people also called Shambhala by other names. First, Olmo Lungring, and in Western culture, it became known as Shangri-La. Shambhala is even said to be the land of 1,000 names. While the Hindus called it Aryavartha, others have called it the Forbidden Land, the land of white waters, and even the land of radiant spirits. But regardless of the name, the description remained consistent across centuries. Shambhala exists simultaneously as a physical kingdom and a spiritual state. But that duality doesn't make it less real, it makes it more complex. And speaking of complex, what does the Shambhala kingdom look like? So what exactly is this place that exists between dimensions? What do the ancient texts actually say about Shambhala's physical form? Starting with the Kalachakra Tantra and its mind-boggling descriptions. According to this ancient text, Shambhala is shaped like a lotus flower with 8 petals. Note that this is no metaphor, not at all. The 8 petals represent precise geometric patterns. That is, in Shambhala, there are 8 regions surrounding a central palace city called Kalapa. According to the manuscript, these outer boundary is formed by 8 snow-capped mountains, creating natural barriers that make the kingdom nearly impossible to reach. Between these mountain peaks lie valleys where the Shambhala River flows, giving life to this divine land. The geography isn't random. It's deliberately constructed, with each of the 8 petals representing a distinct region within the kingdom. At the center of it all stands Kalapa, the capital city. And this is where the descriptions become absurdly magnificent. The texts describe palaces built from gold, silver, emeralds, sapphires, rubies, and pearls. Note, they were not decorated with these materials, they were built from them. But if the Shambhala kingdom looks this way, who lives in this impossible place? The inhabitants of Shambhala are called the Narkal. Who are these people, you ask? The texts describe them as interesting beings who have achieved physical and mental perfection. Since Shambhala exists as a pure land devoid of sickness, aging is almost non-existent. To this effect, some myths claim the people of Shambhala live for thousands of years, sustained by advanced yoga and spiritual technology. But wait, what is this spiritual technology? The ancient manuscripts describe it in ways that sound eerily like science fiction. They say that it is the ability to manipulate energy with consciousness. When you think of spiritual tech, think of machines that run without fuel, telepathic communication, time travel, and even contact with beings from other worlds. In 1500 AD, people hired artists to paint an image of Shambhala, but there was a strict rule. The artists could not use their imaginations one bit. They had to paint exactly what the Kalachakra scriptures described. And true to the rules, they were watched closely to prevent cheating. By the time these paintings were finished, the spectators were beyond amazed, and this is why. When these paintings were completed, they showed something remarkable. All paintings showed a kingdom that looked both ancient and impossibly advanced. The artworks reflected a civilization that had mastered both spiritual enlightenment and what we might call technology, but in ways higher than what we understand. The kingdom of Shambhala was something to behold, both in text and painting. Which brings us to ask, where is this magnificent kingdom located? If Shambhala is real, Where is it? Rather than leaving us guessing till the very end, the same ancient texts come to our rescue, strangely laying out specific geographical markers, almost like they wanted someone to find it. Starting with the Kalachakra Tantra. In this manuscript, we see that Shambhala lies low in the north of India, hidden deep within the Himalayan mountain range. However, the trails get more specific than that. In the 17th century, a Tibetan scholar named Desai Sangye Gyatso provided actual coordinates. He not only confirmed the northern placement, but he also placed Shambhala between 36 and 48 degrees north latitude. And if you zoom in, that's Mongolia, Western China, and the Altai mountain region. To support the scholar's coordinates, multiple independent sources across centuries kept pointing to the same region. The high-altitude Altai Mountains, the remote valleys between Tibet and Mongolia, the area surrounding Mount Kailash, one of the most sacred peaks in both Hindu and Buddhist tradition. Now, did you know that Mount Kailash itself has never been climbed? Not because it's physically impossible, but because every culture surrounding it, Hindu, Buddhist, Bon, and Jain, considers the mountain so sacred that attempting to summit it would be sacrilege. To top it, texts suggest Shambhala lies directly beneath Mount Kailash or in its shadow. Do you remember when artists painted images of Shambhala? When Western explorers later tried to match these paintings with real terrain, their compasses kept pointing toward one specific zone, the Altai region. This is an area still riddled with unexplained phenomena to date. This is what we mean. Over time, reports keep flying, naming the region to house ruins that predate known civilizations and happenings too strange to tell. With the descriptions, a 17th century Portuguese missionary named Estevão Cachela heard about Shambhala and thought to himself, this might be another name for China. So in 1627, he traveled to Tashil Hunpo, the seat of the Panchen Lama, seeking information. When he realized Shambhala wasn't China, he returned to India to continue his search. However, his writings show that even in the 1600s, the kingdom's location was still being actively discussed and debated. This sparks up the question: with such specific directions in the Kalachakra and other manuscripts, why hasn't anyone found it? That question leads us to one of Shambhala's most disturbing features: the hidden entrances. According to Tibetan monks, you can't just walk into Shambhala. Even if you found the right valley, the right mountain range, or the right coordinates, you still couldn't enter, because Shambhala isn't accessed from the surface. It is accessed through tunnels. What are these tunnels? According to the texts, they are an elaborate underground network connecting Shambhala to other hidden sanctuaries worldwide. But as fascinating as this sounds, the question still pops up: who built these tunnels? Did the inhabitants of Shambhala build them themselves, or were they constructed by older civilizations? To date, this knowledge evades the common man. These aren't small tunnels. Instead, the descriptions suggest passages large enough to move entire populations through. In 1673, when the king of Ladakh attacked the mysterious Guge Kingdom in Tibet, his soldiers discovered something bizarre. The kingdom's entire population, approximately 100,000 people, had vanished overnight. They did not flee, nor were they killed by the soldiers. They were just gone. This is what happened. When soldiers searched the Guge Palace, they found extensive tunnel systems that stretched 1 to 2 kilometers underground. In those tunnels, there were clear signs of recent activity. Some passages had been deliberately collapsed, as if someone wanted to hide where they led. But when the soldiers followed what remained of the tunnel system, it led toward Mount Kailash, the sacred mountain and suspected location of Shambhala. What if the people of Guge fled to Shambhala through underground passages? This question has haunted researchers for centuries, because if those tunnels exist, where else do they lead? The mystery of the Shambhala tunnel network is so complex that it connects to the legend of Agartha, another hidden kingdom said to exist in Earth's interior. Some traditions describe it as a global web of underground sanctuaries, all connected, all preserving ancient knowledge. A global web with entry points scattered across the planet. Some might lie in Mongolia, the Gobi Desert, or perhaps deep in the Himalayas. Knowing this, many people dared to launch themselves into the fire. And so, the search for Shambhala and its hidden tunnels began. Intrigued by the pure mystery of Shambhala, many have tried to locate this place. For centuries, explorers, mystics, and adventurers have risked their lives trying to reach the kingdom of pure beings. While some claim to have gotten close, others have vanished without a trace. And a few brought back stories so disturbing that even now they're difficult to dismiss. One of the famous seekers was Nicholas Roerich, a Russian painter, mystic, and archaeologist. In the 1920s, Roerich led an extensive expedition through Central Asia, an expedition funded secretly by Soviet, British, and American interests. To the public, it was described as cultural research. But Roerich's personal letters that were revealed much later told a different story. When he returned, Tibetan guides believed he must have been really close to Shambhala. Why? His maps aligned shockingly well with ancient Tibetan scrolls that described the kingdom's location. And on August 5, 1927, Roerich witnessed something that eliminated all his doubts. In his diary, he wrote about seeing an oval-shaped object flying in the sky, an object that moved with an intelligent purpose. Roerich believed he had seen a glimpse of Shambhala's advanced technology. To him, this was a clear sign that he was on the right path. But despite his proximity, he never found the entrance. The kingdom remained hidden. In books like Altai Himalaya, Roerich wrote in detail about his experiences. Here, he described mysterious weather events that appeared and vanished instantly. He also noted that the valleys seemed to shift location. Because of his experiences from the expedition, Roerich became convinced that Shambhala existed, not just as a spiritual concept, but as a real place, protected by forces beyond human understanding. But Roerich is not the only researcher who dared to inquire deeply about Shambhala. Helena Blavatsky, the founder of the Theosophical Society, also investigated Shambhala. In her 1888 work, The Secret Doctrine, she described Shambhala as a spiritual utopia guided by enlightened beings she called Mahatmas. According to Blavatsky, these masters worked behind the scenes to guide humanity's evolution. Hard to believe, right? Yes. Blavatsky placed Shambhala in a higher dimension, accessible only to those who had achieved advanced spiritual development. But she insisted that Shambhala and its inhabitants were real. More so, they were actively involved in human affairs, steering civilization away from self-destruction into the light. But Blavatsky was far from done. Soon enough, the darkest chapter in her search history rose to the surface. And it was none other than the Nazis. In 1938, under direct orders from Heinrich Himmler, head of the SS, a team of Nazi scientists and occultists arrived in Tibet. On paper, it was a regular expedition, but in reality, it was something far more sinister. The Ahnenerbe, Hitler's occult research wing, believed Shambhala held the key to ancient Aryan wisdom. They thought the kingdom possessed real energy sources that could power weapons beyond anything the world had seen. They believed Shambhala was connected to Agartha, the inner earth, and that somewhere in Tibet was a portal to this underground realm. Led by Ernst Schaefer, the team studied Tibetan texts, took skull measurements of locals searching for pure bloodlines, and hunted for ancient artifacts. To this day, what they found remains partially classified. But documents seized after the war contained references to the hidden valley of the Dharma King, and maps marking specific locations as zones of spiritual significance. Although the Nazis never publicly announced finding Shambhala, some researchers believe they discovered something important enough that certain files from the expedition were never released, even after Germany's defeat. And this makes a lot of sense when you think about it. But the Nazis weren't the first government to take Shambhala seriously. During the British Raj, explorers like Sir Francis Younghusband and Captain Frederick Bailey were sent deep into the Himalayas with the same mission. In fact, British intelligence files from 1910 to 1930 contain entries marked Shambhala Investigation. What does this tell you? Even to the government, Shambhala was not dismissed as superstition. For centuries, the search for Shambhala relied on ancient texts, local legends, and the accounts of explorers who may or may not have been reliable. But in recent decades, something changed. Technology that can see through the Earth itself. With the recent technology, seismic surveys of the Himalayan region have revealed something extraordinary. In areas that have been considered sacred for a long time, vast underground chambers have been found beneath them. We are talking massive hollow spaces, some of them large enough to contain entire cities. The chambers are located at various depths, some relatively shallow at a few hundred meters, while others extend thousands of meters below the surface. To date, geological surveys still struggle to explain them. That's because the chambers are too symmetrical, too precisely positioned, and more surprisingly, too large. What makes this even more intriguing is the correlation with surface features. Remember those satellite images showing unusual geometric formations in remote Himalayan locations? Those surface formations align almost perfectly with the underground chambers. These discoveries pose uncomfortable questions. If these chambers are natural, why do they align with ancient descriptions of Shambhala's 8-petal structure? If they're artificial, who built them, when, and for what purpose? All of this raises one crucial question. If Shambhala exists, if enlightened beings really are living in golden halls beneath the mountains, why stay hidden? What are they waiting for? According to the prophecy in the ancient texts, the answer is simple but terrifying. It's this: they're waiting for the end. The Kalachakra Tantra describes the gradual deterioration of human civilization as materialism spreads across the world. When the barbarians, people who follow only material desires, unite under an evil leadership and believe they've conquered everything, that's when Shambhala will reveal itself. However, this reveal will not be peaceful. According to the texts, the 25th king of Shambhala, named Rudra Chakrin, will emerge at the head of a massive army. This king will wage war not for land or resources, but to restore cosmic order and righteousness to a world that has completely lost its way. For a clearer context, the Kalachakra even provides timing. It places this final battle approximately 5,000 years after the Buddha's death. Most Tibetan texts date Buddha's passing to around 500 BC, which would place Shambhala's emergence in the years 2424 or 2425. That's only 400 years from now. How eerie. On the flip side, Hindu texts tell a parallel story. The Vishnu Purana and Bhagavata Purana describe Kalki, the 10th avatar of Vishnu, who will be born in Shambhala during the final phase of the Kali Yuga. A warrior king on a white horse, wielding a blazing sword, destroying forces of darkness to usher in a new golden age. While there are some differences, both traditions agree on one thing. The final king will appear when time itself reaches a breaking point. At a time when humanity has forgotten its divine purpose and machines overpower human wisdom. At the darkest age when violence, greed, and ignorance dominate the earth so completely that intervention becomes necessary, Shambhala awaits. Sounds familiar? Climate change, nuclear weapons. Artificial intelligence is developing beyond our control. Mass extinction events. By many measures, we're checking off boxes on the apocalypse prophecy list at an alarming rate. Don't you agree? But here's what makes the Shambhala prophecy different. It doesn't describe helpless humans waiting for divine rescue. The texts suggest that Shambhala's warriors have been training for thousands of years, developing abilities that would seem like sorcery to ordinary humans. The texts say that when the warriors emerge, they won't fight with conventional weapons. Instead, they will fight with spiritual technology, and it would be a war to restore humanity's connection to the higher truth. And according to the prophecy, Shambhala will win. The forces of darkness will be vanquished, and a worldwide golden age will begin. But victory comes at a cost. If this truly happens, the world as we know it will be fundamentally transformed. Those who cling to materialism and ignore spiritual truth will not survive the transition. So what does this all mean? What are you supposed to do with this information? The rational mind wants to dismiss everything we've discussed. It would be easy to call these ancient prophecies mere folk tales cooked up by the Hindus, or even better, tag the talk of underground kingdoms as fantasy. If anyone raised the geometric formations, scientists wave them off as glacial anomalies, and every seismic data found might as well be natural caves. With these excuses overlapping with subtle evidence, the question isn't if Shambhala exists at this point. The question is, when it reveals itself, will you be able to see it? What do you think about Shambhala? Could the prophecy be unfolding right now? Tell us in the comments. If Shambhala is real, then it may be only the first doorway, one that leads to a far greater secret hidden deep inside the earth. Click the video on screen now to uncover the underground empire that may still be alive beneath our feet. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe to Secret Origins for more mysteries like this. Keep your minds open, and until we meet again.